AI is evolving faster than enterprise structures can absorb. This month, 8 developments reshaped how companies build, deploy, and govern AI systems. Here's what happened in November and what it means for your leadership agenda.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take that fire hose of information you've been sending us and really distill it down to the essential knowledge you need.
And today, we're diving into 3 forces that are they're defining everything in AI adoption right now.
Absolutely. We're talking about constraints, autonomy, and compliance.
And the key thing is, these 3 aren't operating in isolation anymore. Our source material paints a very clear picture here.
Which is what?
That AI is hitting these hard operational realities. And those realities are forcing some major non-optional shifts in both architecture and, governance.
Exactly. So the whole mission for this deep dive is to connect the dots on these latest movements. We're going from, say, GPU shortages that are resetting everyone's plans
to landmark court rulings that are completely reshaping legal liability.
And even these totally new organizational paradoxes that are showing up in the workplace. We want to give you a clear map of the why and the so what behind all this.
It's really about getting past the hype cycle and focusing on the friction points.
And the strategic responses to them.
Yes.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I think we absolutely have to start with the foundational reality, the one that's forcing all the other changes.
The physical limits.
The stark physical limitations of compute power. It seems like the biggest topic in any infrastructure discussion right now isn't software. It's just the raw bottleneck.
It completely defines the playing field. It's the starting point for understanding why anything else is moving the way it is. The global data shows these bottlenecks are intensifying.
And that's what's deciding how fast enterprises can scale their AI workloads. Or even if they can scale.
Exactly.
Can you give us the specifics? Because hearing bottlenecks is one thing, but the timeline is another. What are companies actually hitting right now?
So the primary choke points are pretty profound and structural. First, you've just got the GPU supply.
The chips themselves.
The chips themselves.
Yeah.
Major cloud providers are reporting these extended lead times for the high-performance stuff, stretching out, in some cases, well into late 2026.
Wow. Late 2026. I mean, that's not a temporary supply chain hiccup. That's a multi-year strategy problem.
It is. And they're pivoting, of course. But the demand for those top-tier accelerators just vastly outstrips the supply.
And that leads right into the second big limit, I'm guessing.
The data center itself. Even if you can get the chips, you need a place to put them.
The actual infrastructure, power and cooling.
Precisely. Energy and cooling restrictions are still huge barriers to expansion, especially in places like Europe and parts of Asia.
Right.
Building this kind of infrastructure needs massive power density. And we've seen cities literally impose moratoriums on new data center construction because of the strain on the power grid.
So these aren't just technical problems anymore.
No, not at all. They're regulatory, they're environmental, and they're ultimately real estate barriers.
So if you're an enterprise and you know you can't get the hardware you need for, 30 months? Or you can't power the facilities, then that whole centralized, massive cloud training model it starts to look unsustainable.
It becomes unsustainable for everything. That's the direct implication. It forces organizations to make some really tough choices about model sizes.
Like, do we really need the biggest model possible for this task?
Exactly. And you are absolutely forced to look at alternatives. That compute has to be distributed somehow.
Which brings us perfectly to the architectural response. If constraints are the problem, well, decentralization and deep autonomy are the solutions we're seeing.
And they're being deployed in some fascinatingly divergent ways. We are really witnessing a fundamental pivot here.
The shift to the edge?
The shift to the edge.
And the clearest example of this has to be Apple's move toward on-device generative models, what they're calling Apple Intelligence.
It's a textbook response to both that cloud congestion we were talking about and the rising demand for governance.
So instead of everything going to a faraway cloud, they're running these pretty sophisticated models right on the device.
Right on the device. Think of it like moving the calculation from some huge central library right onto your own desk. It's faster and it's private.
And for enterprises, especially in regulated industries like, say, banking or healthcare, that has to be critical. It addresses latency and privacy at the same time.
That's the huge benefit. All your sensitive, content proprietary data, patient records, it stays within the device's boundary.
So the data never has to cross that public cloud firewall.
Which dramatically simplifies compliance. It prioritizes low latency, sure, but the real win is that strong privacy assurance.
It really proves that generative AI is becoming hybrid by nature, not just cloud native by default.
Exactly. It's an efficiency move driven by scarcity and a compliance move driven by risk.
But here's where it gets, I think, really interesting. Because while Apple is moving compute out to the edge, other major players are going in a different direction.
They're going deeper, not wider.
Right. They're deepening the model's capability and independence within the cloud. They're pursuing autonomy, not just decentralization.
That's the parallel evolution we're seeing. Look at OpenAI's advancements. They're pioneering these extended memory features.
Which means the model can maintain context across sessions. It remembers you.
It remembers you, what projects you were working on last week, your preferences, all without a fresh prompt every single time.
And that's coupled with their work on autonomous modes, right?
Correct. So the model can execute these multi-step tasks with way less human handholding. It's evolving from a powerful calculator into an independent agent.
But isn't that a massive risk? I mean, if the model is taking initiative based on a conversation from 2 weeks ago, how do you even begin to audit that decision path?
That is the critical governance question. The moment a model retains history and takes initiative, the line between assistant and actor gets incredibly narrow.
It demands a completely new framework for monitoring.
It does. And we saw Anthropic pursuing a similar but kind of distinct path. They focus more on reasoning.
Extended reasoning capabilities, I remember seeing that.
Yes, which allows for much longer sequences of thought before it gives you an answer. You can create these branching plans. If scenario A happens, I do this. If scenario B, I do that.
So it strengthens its ability to handle more complex, judgment-heavy tasks, like interpreting a compliance document or something.
Exactly. So the architectural landscape is really splitting. On one side, physical limits are driving decentralization.
And on the other, expanding autonomy is making the model capable of acting independently.
And the capabilities are just running way ahead of the operational playbook.
That is the perfect transition.
Yeah.
So, what does all this mean for the structure of a business? For human jobs, let's look at the real-world operational impact.
The academic research coming out of places like MIT and Harvard, it presents this profound paradox that organizations are wrestling with right now.
You're talking about the workflow fragmentation research.
I am. The core finding is that while AI clearly accelerates individual output, your personal productivity might literally double.
Okay.
It often fragments the workflows between teams. It actually increases the overall coordination overhead.
That feels so counterintuitive. Why would making everyone faster create more friction? Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say you use an LLM to generate 3 different drafts of a marketing memo in an hour. At the same time, your colleague uses AI to analyze the data for those drafts.
Okay, sounds efficient.
But you've just accelerated the creation of parallel, slightly inconsistent work. Now someone has to spend time reconciling it all.
So faster execution leads to more handoffs, more versions, more inconsistencies, unless you completely redesign the process itself.
You gain velocity at the individual level, but you risk serious misalignment at the collective level. You solve a speed problem only to create a coordination problem.
And we're seeing this play out most clearly with the rise of what are now being called synthetic employees.
That phrase is entering the corporate lexicon fast. We're seeing major service organizations and telcos scaling up these AI voice agent pilots.
And these are way beyond simple chatbots.
Oh, way beyond. They're marketed internally as synthetic employees because they handle full customer interactions. They're integrated with dashboards, SLAs, escalation systems.
So they're acting as full agents. They're not just reading a script. They're determining intent and resolving issues on their own.
That's the key distinction. They're taking initiative.
Right.
And the early results are showing impressive improvements in resolution time, at least in these rules-driven environments.
I have to imagine customer sentiment on that varies pretty widely.
It absolutely does. The experience is highly sensitive to the model's reasoning, but the trajectory is clear. AI is moving from assisting humans to acting as independent agents.
Which, of course, raises the stakes for security and compliance. As these AIs become independent actors, the governance questions get really urgent.
And on the security side, we have very loud warnings coming from agencies like CISA in the US and the NCSC in Europe.
And what's the core change here? It's not like phishing is new.
No, the core change is the democratization of credibility and volume. Threat actors are using AI to generate highly convincing phishing content to mimic executive writing styles.
To perform identity spoofing with terrifying accuracy.
At industrial scale, it's not just about volume anymore. It's about the hyper-personalized credibility of the attacks. which makes them so much harder to detect.
And as companies adopt more of these synthetic agents internally, they're just expanding their own attack surface.
Fundamentally, creating all sorts of new vulnerabilities.
Okay, let's turn to the legal side, because this is also moving incredibly fast. There was that landmark UK High Court ruling on copyright.
A pivotal moment. The court ruled that the model developer did not reproduce or store copyrighted images during training. It was a very specific ruling on how the model works internally.
So the court basically narrowed the definition of reproduction under copyright law, at least in this context.
Correct. It offered some legal guardrails, suggesting that the model's internal weights and vectors are not the same as storing the source material. This has huge implications globally.
So what was the immediate regulatory response to all of this? The new autonomy, the security risks, this legal precedent?
It spurred immediate action everywhere. In the UK, Parliament kicked off new reviews into transparency and dataset disclosure.
And the EU?
The EU intensified its efforts around content labeling and training data clarity.
And in the US, regulators like the SEC also got involved.
Yes. They started exploring whether AI risk management, including the risk from these autonomous agents, should become part of mandatory corporate disclosures.
So they're starting to treat AI risk almost like a financial risk.
That's right. The demand signal from regulators is crystal clear, even if the rules differ. They expect enterprises to understand, control, and document how these autonomous systems are trained and deployed.
The greater the autonomy?
The greater the demand for clear, auditable control.
Okay, let's bring this all together for you. We've seen this core tension driving everything. On one hand, you have physical constraints, GPU scarcity, power limits, driving AI to the edge.
And on the other hand, you have this explosion in capability extended memory, deep reasoning driving AI toward becoming an actor in the workflow, the synthetic employee.
And both of these forces are creating this relentless demand for sophisticated compliance and control structures.
The ultimate success of AI won't be measured by its raw intelligence. It'll be measured by how well organizations manage the operational fallout. That fragmentation paradox is key.
You solve a technical problem only to inherit a massive process problem.
Precisely. The alignment issue, moving from an assistant to an actor, is the central challenge facing every business right now.
So we want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over based on all this. Given the rise of synthetic employees and this evidence on workflow fragmentation, what existing human roles in your own organization will be the first to require a complete top-to-bottom process overhaul, not just simple augmentation, to successfully integrate these independent AI actors?
Think about where that misalignment will hit hardest, because the fate of this technology really hinges on how quickly the human and process layers can adapt.
Thank you for diving deep with us. Keep exploring.